Gaurav, really glad to have you back.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Are you
Last
having
time,
mocha?
am I having what?
Is that mocha or what is that?
Oh no. Well, it's just coffee with a little bit of milk. I don't know. These
Nice.
days, I'm just addicted to that creamy coffee feeling. I don't know if it's the seasons changing, but there's something about it.
I like it, dude. I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But yeah, no, really glad to have you back because the last time you were on was, believe it or not, March of 2021. And that was an episode that we called
Damn.
Elevate Your Career Progression. So a lot of time has passed, but it's a timeless episode because I still get people texting me or messaging me about how it's helped them, with getting a promotion or a higher pay. And I know for me, one of the biggest takeaways was just the interview tips that you laid out and how to actually approach recruiters, and just being like really scientific. I just felt like it was just such an like a powerful conversation. It was so applicable, and that's why I'm really excited for you to come back.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. And hey, congrats to you. You guys just crossed 100 episodes, right?
That's right,
Just
man.
recently. That's
That's
awesome.
right.
That's dedication. That's real dedication. Congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. It's one of those things where I look back on it and I feel like it's something that's held me accountable. So like 100 times you had to do something, you did it. And there's been ups and downs. Like the first 88 we did in consecutive weeks. And then life situations came up where we took a break
Hmm.
and then kind of adjusted to now just having like a monthly cadence. And a couple episodes ago, so now a couple months ago, like it's just me. So I used to have a co-host, no longer have a co-host, and just building something from scratch. You just go through all these iterations and you learn how to have a thicker skin. You don't really think about rejection. You kind of just go through the process and try to figure it out. And I mean, just between me and you, it's like I listened to some of the older episodes and I realized there's times in the conversation where I could have asked another question or like a different type of question. And so I'm still learning about how to
Hmm.
even do this. Like,
Right, right.
so, people out there with thousands of episodes, they've done thousands of swings, and so I'm just trying to figure out like how do you keep the conversation flowing? How do you ask more maybe devil's advocate style questions if
Yeah.
appropriate, right? So I'm still trying to figure things out myself.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not easy. My friend, he's the host of a podcast, co-host of a podcast called Marketing School. And now, like on a monthly basis, they do, I think, like a few million downloads per month. But he told me that for the first 2 years, like he would get 6 downloads per month, 10 downloads per month, 4 downloads per month. And he's like, I just kept, but same thing as what you're saying. He's like, I just had to keep sticking with it, getting better at my style, bringing on better guests, but then making it engaging. And it's not easy. And he's an introvert, like he's a real through and through introvert. And so for him, like he had to develop so much, like he had to operate so far out of his comfort zone to do this.
Yeah.
But now, like, 6 years, 7 years later, they have millions of downloads per month. It's pretty crazy.
That is crazy and that's impressive. And it just goes to show like at some point things click and there's a
Yeah.
reach. Um, but the other thing, with podcasting that I've realized is like you you can get into it for the wrong reasons. If you're getting into it trying to make money, if you're getting into it trying to act cool, you're probably gonna fail. You probably won't even get past 10 episodes. The
Hmm.
reason I like it is because it's, again, as I said, it's holding me accountable to something. But more importantly, like I'm learning so much. Every single time I'm having a conversation with somebody, something is shared with me that's new. Like I'm shifting perspectives. I'm able to take something in and try to apply it to my personal or professional life. And so for me, I really just do it for myself. And I think just thinking of myself as the only audience member kind of helps me just realize like, okay, for the hundreds, we're getting a couple hundred people that listen to each episode. And like that's awesome, but it's
Yeah.
really just for me.
That's sweet, dude. I think that's the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
Just do it because it intellectually stimulates you, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly. And then
cool.
I get to meet people like you. So
Likewise, man. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. But all right, so like you really focus on helping people get their career on track or help them make career changes. I really feel like this is one of those timely episodes because for anyone who has been following or hasn't been following, over the last 18 months, especially in the tech space, the startup world, it's been really rough for a lot of people. A lot of companies were forced by investors to make decisions that were suited to get these companies towards a path to profitability. One of those decisions was around laying a lot of people off. So I know a lot of people in the last 18 months who were cut from their jobs, and they're still looking for their next role, whether it's a level up or just getting into something that they really want. Um, and I know that you help people land high paying jobs. You help them with the entire process. You're having all these types of conversations with all different types of people. From your perspective, what are you seeing right now in terms of the biggest mistakes that job seekers are making? Like, where are they feeling stuck? Where are they getting stuck? Where are they prolonging the search? Like, what are you seeing from your perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. I it's funny. It's like I think the biggest mistake most people make, and it has nothing to do with like the market that we're in. It's just kind of what I've seen all throughout like my time doing this now, and I've made these mistakes myself, is most people don't really plan out their job search. And not even just their job search, man. They don't plan out like their career. It's so if you think about us as humans, like think about all the things that we plan. We plan like what we're going to do tomorrow. We plan what we're going to do this weekend. We plan what cars we want to buy, what I don't know, clothes we want to buy. Like everything is kind of thought through, right? But yet when it comes to our careers, it's like everything kind of happens just willy-nilly. And I think it's such a detriment to most people because I understand why most people don't do it is because we were never really taught to even think about that. If you think about when we all entered, most of us entered the workforce, right? It was probably after college or some sort of like after high school, or maybe some people went to a technical school or a boot camp or whatever. But then the second you're finished with that thing, career counselors, guidance counselors, or whatever, they just tell you, all right, put together a resume and go and apply to as many jobs as you can. And so you just kind of do. And then you get a job, right? At some point, you get a job. And now you're like, all right, I got my job. I'm cool. I don't really need to think about it. Right. And so, of course, a couple years go by, whatever, and you're like, maybe something negative happens, and that forces you to think about getting a next job. So you could get laid off, like many people are today. You could hate your boss, toxic culture, underpaid, undervalued, all the things. And you're like, dang, I should like really leave this situation. So everyone in the job market that I see, at least most people that come and work with us at CareerSprout, and I think it's indicative of like the bigger population here, or like the macro view, is they come to us because something negative has happened. I'm laid off is the number one reason right now.
Yeah.
But the other reasons is that, man, I'm so underpaid, or man, I really hate my job, or man, I feel really stuck. And it's like a very reactionary thing. And so if you think about most people, when you make decisions in a reactionary manner, you typically make the wrong decision,
Mm.
right? Or you make a rushed decision. So most people who are laid off, they're like, I just got to put together a resume and get another job as fast as I can. And I get it. We have bills we need to pay or whatever. But
Yeah.
what we don't do is take a second to say, well, hold on for 1 minute. Where do I want to take my career over the long term? And last episode, we talked about the M&M store. And essentially what we're saying is, what is my North Star? What do I want to be doing 10 years from now? And then reverse engineering that and saying, well, what's the fastest way for me to leverage everything that I've done to get to that destination 3 years from now, 5 years from now, right? And so I think that's a big mistake. And you if you notice most people's careers, they kind of like do one thing for a little bit, do another thing for a little bit. They kind of bounce around. They go like this. They don't go up. They go side to side. right?
Mm.
They stay at some company for far too long, layoff, whatever. They stay at another company, they go to another company without ever really realizing or asking themselves if that's a good company or job for me to even take. So then they do that thing, they dislike it, and they go to another one. And they just kind of like, what's it? They ping pong around throughout their entire career. And
Yeah,
then they
it's like out
wonder,
of
like,
desperation.
yeah, it's out of desperation. And then they wonder 10 years, 15 years go by. They're like, man, I haven't done anything meaningful. It was like, yeah, because you never really mapped out where you wanted to go. So it's like that saying, right? If you don't know where you want to go, any road will get you there. So
Mm.
I think that that's the biggest mistake that most people make is they don't take the time to build a map for where they want to go in their career. And then as a result, they just kind of drift around aimlessly.
Yeah, I could totally see myself as part of the that group, right? Like out of desperation, you take a job, it maybe pays well, maybe it's a good company name, so you're wearing your team logo. It's like it's a great name to have behind you, like the email address at xyz.com. Like it feels good to be at this
Mm-hmm.
company, but then like yeah, you just end up staying in that situation for like 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, and you're like, I still work at the same company, but like, where are my skills expanding? Like, I never even had the opportunity to, you know, experiment in another field or another industry. And I think that looking back on it, when you're on your deathbed, it's like, did you really have to be at that company for that long, or would you have rather experimented and experienced different industries, different people, different mindsets, different ways of doing things? Like what's working at one company and the way you're doing it, that's great. You're getting all these skills, but like if you go to a different company in a different industry, you're going to learn a new way of doing a very similar thing. And I just feel like at the end of your life, you're going to be like more well-rounded that way.
Yeah. And your skills compound, right? They
Yeah.
don't atrophy. Um,
Yeah.
like it's a funny, there's a stat out there, and I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's true because I've seen it over and over again. You know, most people on average, they will get anywhere between a 1 to 3.5% raise every year, right? It's called COLA, cost of living adjustment.
Right.
Inflation right now is like 8%. So no matter what, you're getting underpaid, right? Like you're not getting paid your worth. But anyway, so I think people look at that thing wrong. They look at it like I'm being rewarded for my loyalty when, I quite frankly, I think companies are just keeping you to stay put, keeping you happy enough to stay put and not look, because it's very uncomfortable to up and leave something that is, not bad, but
Right.
it's not really serving you, but it's not bad. It's comfortable. And so every year you get this little adjustment, you're like even more compelled to stay and not look.
Yeah.
But this is what you're saying. So like 7 years, 8 years go by, and all of a sudden you get laid off. And now the only thing you know is that one thing. And you've built no network, right? You've never tracked your performance. You don't know what kind of job to go after. You're largely underpaid. In comparison, your skill set, depending on the skill set, of course, on average increases in value by 15% every year. So think
Interesting.
about that. So if every 2, 3 years you looked for a new job and you could secure a 15 to 20% raise, it's advantageous to do that, right? Now, I'm not saying you should only do things for money. I really am not about that, but I do think you should get paid what you're worth. And if a company is not valuing what you bring to the table, they're taking you for granted, it's time to look, because you might be surprised at what you find. Otherwise, every single year you stay at your job, adjusting this COLA compared to like what you could be getting, you're leaving 12 to potentially 15% on the table every single year. Now compound that over like 6, 7, 10 years, right? It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
shame.
No, yeah. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack there because I feel like the only COLA adjustment that actually works is the one that's in Social Security. It's the only one that actually keeps up with inflation. And I don't know if you saw this week in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article on like the US Census, and it basically revealed that like because of inflation, Americans are just literally poorer. Like the dollar is just not going as far as it was, and you're not keeping up other than for the people that are getting Social Security. They're the only ones who actually adjusted with inflation. So that's a really interesting point there, and something to like really be mindful of in the macro, like see what's going on in the macro environment, look at your own micro situation and figure out like, are you keeping up with the cost of living? Um, and I would just say, it's really interesting you say that because not too long ago, I had somebody actually tell me that you're most likely going to get a bigger pay raise by leveraging what you know now and going somewhere else, as opposed to sticking in the same company. Now, again, I don't know how true that is, but based on what you just said, it seems like it is true. Um, but actually, like, talk about some of the frameworks that you're sharing with people or using with people, whether they are 15 years into their career or whether they're just early, maybe they're 2 or 3 years into their career. Like, what are the frameworks that you're actually sharing with people right now?
Yeah, that's a good one. One of the bigger frameworks that we use, because so in our program, we don't really work with like entry level people or people earlier in their career. Our whole coaching program's kind of tailored for like, you know, people in their like 2 to 500K and specifically in tech. And so one of the frameworks that we use is what's called the career progression life cycle. And it just kind of helps people decide or better decide how to move forward um, by understanding where they are now. So how that works is, and I'll just give you very high level. There's a lot of intricacies in it, but in the high level, the career progression life cycle states that there's 3 stages to everyone's career in the workforce, right? Not entrepreneurship. And the first stage is, you could describe that as learning, right? And in this stage, think of this as like your early 20s, kind of to your maybe early 30s, right? In this stage, you're not so much, you're not so focused on like how much you make or what your title is. What you're more focused on or should be focused on is just racking up as much good experience as you possibly can. And ideally, some accomplishments as well, right? And most people do that pretty well. Then comes stage 2, which gets harder, and that we describe as earning. So you're going from learning to earning. And in this stage, now think of this as kind of like your mid 30s to like your late 30s, early-ish 40s, okay? This is where you are now capitalizing on everything you spent the last X amount of years learning, and you are typically entering the early stages of leadership and capping out right around like the mid stages. So think of like individual contributor all the way to like senior director, right? And if you're in tech, depending on the position, this is where you should be kind of like in the 200s ish. And then comes the final stage, which is also the most elusive stage, is stage 3, and we call that steering, like you're steering a boat or whatever. And in this stage, you're helping a company move in the direction that aligns with its mission and its vision. And you're doing this in the capacity of a senior leader / executive. So think senior director, VPS, VP, executive, vice president, all the way to C-level, right? It is the most elusive. And now um, if again in tech especially, think of this as like your mid 40s until you ride it out, right? You're in the 4 or 5 600s depending on position or more, right? We have some clients in like they've made 1.7 million in total comp once they got to like C-level. And now think about this. So you've probably seen this, Arjun, and so many of our clients have. I certainly have. When you've been part of an organization where you see someone in their 40s, 50s, or 60s being managed by someone in their 30s, right? Or someone in their late 40s being managed by someone in their early 40s or late 30s. I always ask my clients, why do you think that is? And it's because that person in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, never made it through the life cycle fast enough, right? And now they are deemed as someone who's not cut out for senior leadership. And in tech, they'll always favor the up and comer rather than the person that had their chance and didn't take it, right? And I know to be what I know the truth is it's not like that person in their 40s, 50s, 60s are not cut out for it. I know that. It's just they never made it through the life cycle for whatever reason. They got really complacent, which a lot of people do, comfortable, cozy, didn't try to advocate, or they were never given a clear path to growth. They worked for a manager or a leader that didn't advocate for them, kept them where they were at, didn't support them. They worked for a company that had a very toxic culture, whatever, right? Could be any of these things, could be a combination of these things, but they just didn't move. And so we use this framework to first tell our clients like identify where you are in that frame, in that sort of framework, right? Most of our clients are stuck in some stage of stage 2. There's like little mini stages, right? They're stuck there and they've been stuck there. And so once they kind of see that, it's eye-opening for them to know that it helps them realize, like, look, if I make the wrong decision again, I'm going to get stuck in this stage. And so we use that framework to help them, again, get clarity on where they are today, but then get even more motivated about what decision they should be making next and where should they focus their job search on, right? And so I think that's a really powerful framework because it's just eye-opening. And the second framework we use, which is more generalized, but it's a good one to know, is we call it small fish, big ocean versus big fish, small pond, right? And so this is just more to know what you should be focusing on in general. It's, of course, it's not binary. So the way that works is when you're earlier in your career, you're usually a small fish. And it's a good thing to be I see a lot of people who, when they start out in the workforce in their early 20s, they want to go and work for some really bootstrapped, what they consider to be sexy startup, bunch of like 20-year-olds running around, but the problem is when you do that, especially in your early, you're not a small fish. You're wearing multiple hats. Therefore, you have not, you become ultimately a jack of all trades instead of master of none, right? Or master of one. And so what happens is if and when that opportunity does not work out and you're done with it, you don't even know what opportunity to look for next because you're like, damn, I wore like so many hats. Well, I don't even know what I'm good at. And I see this all the time. So what I always tell people, at least younger people who are earlier in their careers, when you start out, it's more advantageous to go and be the big fish the small fish in a big ocean, because you're in a larger organization, which is way more stable. They are paying you to get really good at that one skill, right? Or maybe two skills. Plus, you're developing a really strong alumni network, and then you can leverage that more and more. It's much more leverageable. And as you kind of spend time and you become a slightly like medium-sized fish, then you can leverage that and go be the big fish in a small pond, right? Because now it's the smaller companies that aspire to be the size of the Googles or the LinkedIns or the Hulus or the whatever you name it, they will always overpay for somebody that comes from a bigger company to lead up some org in their company, right? Because the perception is, hey, you worked at Google for the last 9 years and you moved up from entry level to senior product manager or group product manager, whatever. You must have developed really good habits. You understand how product works. You understand how to take a product from 0 to 1. You understand how to build go-to-market, right? You just have good habits. So let us give you 50, 60, 80K more. Why don't you come here and then build our product org? And now you get everything, right? You get the better pay, you get the more equity, you get opportunity for growth, leadership, and you get to tell a better story. So it's just another framework that we think about a lot.
I love it. I love it. So the first one was learning, earning, steering. And in that learning stage, I mean, even in the example you just shared, it's like, my question to you is how impactful are conversations with managers at that point in terms of like, hey, let's set up a plan for career progression. It seems like in the example that you just shared, where like somebody was at Google for 9 years and then went to a smaller company and got paid more. It's like they didn't have a conversation with management. They had a conversation with themselves and figured it out. So my question is like, you often hear like, have a conversation with your manager about your career and where you want to go in the next year or two. It's like, have you seen that actually be impactful? And if you have, like, what is the construct of that conversation? Like, how do you actually make that a meaningful conversation that can actually be executed on?
Yeah, I mean, it is beneficial because you should be tracking, you should have, when you're early in your career, you should have a clear definition of what success looks like, right? And so the better question, so I think the better question to keep asking yourself and to have with your leadership team is, in what ways can I keep developing my skills? In what ways can I keep expanding my opportunity to make a larger impact? And it's kind of like, if you think about like mathematics, right? When we start off, we don't just go straight to geometry or calculus or whatever, right? We have to learn basic 1+1 addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. And once we've mastered that foundation, then we're ready to move on to the next level, which is whatever it is, right? Maybe it is geometry and then it's trigonometry. I don't know. I sucked at math, but you learn the basic foundation first, and then you keep leveling up. So when you're in your career earlier on, and I don't, the conversation I never want to have, because I don't know how to have, is like, well, how do I figure it out? It's like, I don't know. But this is just for the people that know kind of where they want to go.
Yeah.
So then if you know where you're going, then you got to ask yourself, okay, well, what is the foundational first level, first principles that I need to understand in my core skills and my core responsibilities? So if I'm an entry level product manager, what are the things I need to know in order for me to be successful? And so that's the conversation to have with your leadership. And then your manager, whatever, then you start meeting with them on a regular basis, could be weekly, bi-weekly, making sure that you are evaluating your performance. Where am I getting off track? What could I be doing better? Right? What am I doing well? And then as you are getting, as you're course correcting your way through, you will have leveled up naturally, right? You've secured a skill set and you're now good at it. Because you've defined the KPIs, or you've defined what success looks like in your existing role. Once you've started getting good at that thing, then the conversation to be having is, okay, what's the next thing I can take on my plate that would allow me to level up my skills even more and level up my skills even more? So the question is, how can I keep making a better or bigger impact? Because the more impact you make, the more income you make. That's it. The money you make today is directly correlated with the impact you're making. That's pure and simple. If you are getting laid off, and you think you shouldn't have been laid off, sometimes the hard truth is, well, maybe you weren't making as big of an impact as you thought, right? Take the accountability.
Yeah. I mean, and even in the day to day of like what you're doing on a daily basis, is like, think to yourself, like, is this impactful? Am I making the biggest impact for the customer, the client, for myself, for the company? Like, even if you just think in that framework of impact only, that will set you apart, because your results and the outcome will kind of speak for itself, so that when you do have the conversation about leveling up your impact and what you could do next, like, there's there's a body of work behind it. It's like, I've done these things because I had this mindset of making an impact, and now let's try to see what we can do next.
Yes.
Um,
And if you're meeting with your manager constantly and tracking all of these KPIs, you should have like some sort of data bank. Basically, it could be as simple, honestly, as a Google Doc. Every meeting, here's what they said I've achieved. Here's the direct impact I've made. Here's where I need to get better. So that when it comes time to level up and look for a new role, you have a log of like all the great things that you've done. So when you go for the position that's the next level up, and that management, that those interviews come and those conversations come, you can clearly articulate, here's what I've done, here's how I've done it, here's what I've learned, here's the impact I've made. And it becomes a much easier sell for them, because if they can see, man, you have a track record of consistently improving, consistently making an impact, of course you're ready for this role, because if we can give you some level of guidance, you'll crush it here as well. And we already know how to take accountability, and that in and of itself is kind of priceless.
yeah, one of the things I do is every Friday on my calendar, I have a block. It's just literally called weekly wrap. and I have a
Mm,
Google sheet, and I just go through the wins of the week. So what went well, what was okay, and where I need help. And I just do that every week,
I love that.
from like late on the afternoon on a Friday. But it's a great way to just wrap up the week, think about the next week for me personally. And then to your point, it's like when there's a one-on-one or a mid-year or a year end, it's like I have this sheet where I can just like look at it and see like, all right, here's what I did over the course of the last 6 months. Put that in the review. Here's and then honestly for me it's like also just being vulnerable enough in front of teammates and in front of leadership around like here's where I need help, like so it's just I don't know, it just
You're
helps.
right.
Yeah.
There's something you and I talked about last time that I think is worth bringing up. I think we talked about it last time, but what you just said is I love that. And I think everyone should be doing that, because what you imagine, you do this every week for 6 months to a year or year and a half, right? You will literally know that I am much better than I was when I first started, right? So therefore, your skill set, your value has gone up. Okay. So I think about this like a lot. We all think about a home. You bought a home, right? Think about stocks. We've probably bought stocks at some point, whatever. When we buy a stock or when we buy a home, ideally we want to buy it when it's kind of undervalued, right? Or maybe fairly valued, but we will never sell it until it has gone up, unless we just, really need the cash or whatever. Right. So
Right.
if you buy a stock of Disney at 100 and it goes down to $60, are you selling it? No.
Probably not. Yeah.
Unless you really need the money, you're not. You're just going to hold it out because we know it's Disney. It's going to go back up. But if it goes to 200, are you most likely going to sell it? Yeah, right. At some point. Point is, you invest in something low and then you sell when it's high, right? So think about your actual career as an investment itself, right? It is literally a vehicle, an investment vehicle, just like stocks, right? Because it's the thing that directly pays you. So the more
Yeah.
you invest in your career, the higher your value will go. And I find this is what like is mind-boggling to me. It almost frustrates me if I let myself get frustrated, which is no, everyone looks for a new job, or not everyone, but most people, they look for a new job when they are down, their value is down. I got laid off, I hate this, I'm not paid, whatever. It's right, they're down, right? And so when you make decisions based off when you're down, they're typically the wrong decisions because they're emotional. And when you're not thinking rationally, you typically make poor decisions, right? Most people do. But if you take the time to invest in yourself and then you're tracking it and you can see that your value has gone up, that's the best time to look for a job, because you are literally, your value is way higher.
Yeah.
So I'm not waiting around for my company to pay me my worth. Unless they do, that's great, right? But if they're not, I should look, because I'm actually like, my value has gone up. Some company out there is certainly going to value that, right?
Yeah.
And so I just can't fathom why people don't think of like their career as an investment. They treat it almost like they don't think of it even,
Yeah. So
right?
reactionary. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, totally. Speaking of waiting around, you know, I know a lot of people that are still waiting around on their next opportunity. And in your experience, like with the people that you're working with, like on average, how long is it taking for you to help them find a new role? And then in comparison to like the broader scale, like what is the average on the street versus the average with the people that you're working with?
On the street. I mean, I think, man, you go on LinkedIn right now. What's today? September 15th to 2023, right? You go on LinkedIn right now, you'll find hundreds and hundreds, or thousands rather, of people saying, I've been applying for the last 9 months. I've been applying for the last 10 months. And I've sent out 400 applications, gone on this many interviews, don't have a job. I
Yep.
think it's taking people on average like 10 months, 9 months. I don't know the exact stat, but I know it's somewhere around that. In our program, we're seeing um, from the first day they have their conversation with us to the day they accept their offer. That's what we track. We call our first conversation a career audit. So what we track is that from the day they do their audit with us to the day they accept an offer, The last cohort, which was this past summer, again 2023, the average was 71.3 days. The cohort before that was 64.5 days or something like that. And summer's always slower anyway. But on average, our cohorts trend usually between like 63 to 67, 68 days. So that's kind of what our clients are seeing. So 2 months, right? A little over
Yeah, 2 to
two months.
3 months. Yeah, exactly. That's a remarkable difference. And so obviously you shared the frameworks earlier, but is there anything else that you're doing differently in the program that you can share that's leading to this type of success?
Yeah. So and I'll, our stats are a little skewed, just FYI, because we very much cherry pick the people we want to work with. We're very fortunate enough to be in that position. And therefore, one, we pick the people we want to work with. And the people we try to pick are the ones that we know are going to take the action and follow the steps and all that, and I'll walk you through the steps. But two, we control the size of our cohorts, right? So we don't really let more than 10 people in. Actually, never do we let more than 10 people in at any given time. So
It's a lot of
therefore,
people, though. That's still a lot of people.
I mean, there's coaching programs that will take like 200-300 people. I mean, as many people that want to sign up, they'll take them. But then you just got to know there's no way you can help 30, 40, hundreds of people at any given point, unless you're just having them watch some modules or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a teacher in a classroom. Like, what's the
Yeah,
ratio, you know?
yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. It is like a teacher to student ratio. So we want to keep that high. So what we do for us, and this is good for your listeners, right? So let's assume no one ever works with me, and that's fine. This is what we take them through, right? So we have typically 5 steps that we guide them through, and we literally handhold them through the whole way, right? I mean, we have daily coaching calls, one-on-one calls, group calls. We have a huge community of past mentors that are right there and willing to help. So this is why they have a lot of support. So the first thing we do, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, the very first thing we do when anyone comes into our program is what's called a career audit. This is where they will spend, and I do these myself, even though we have a team, I will do each of these. It's to me one of the most important parts of the entire program. So the career audit is a 90-minute to a 2-hour long call where I sit with each person that comes in individually and I have them deconstruct their entire career for me. And I mean, there's a lot of questions and things that we dig into, but more broadly, what I'm looking for is throughout your career, tell me, what are some of the biggest problems that you've solved? How have you solved those problems? Because now I'm looking for transferable skills, tangible skills, in all the things. Which problems have you liked solving? Throughout your career, where have you thrived the most? What did you enjoy? What did you dislike? Because when we talk about what we disliked and we start kind of getting closer to like the things they value, that helps us make better decisions going forward, right? Because they know what wrong looks like versus right looks like. And so in addition to that, I also want to know throughout your career on these projects you're talking about, what was the biggest impact that you've made? What is the quantifiable data that tells me, or that tells you were successful? I don't know. Was it that the thing you worked on generated, a few million in sales? Did you help reduce costs if you're, in finance or something? Did you help improve efficiencies if you're in operations? Did you help deliver 97% of the projects you worked on ahead of schedule and under budget if you're a project manager? What is it, right? Anyway, and so now what becomes abundantly clear, and we're still on the audit, right? This is kind of like a long process, but now what becomes abundantly clear is, number one, what is the value that you, Urgent, bring to the open market, right? Now we know it. The second is, what is the impact that you, Urgent, have not only made in your career, but you're more than capable of making based on your track record, right? And also, I'm starting to understand, what is your narrative? Who are you as a human? What do you like? This is really important, because this is what, if you create a good narrative, it's what separates you from the thousands and hundreds of other people applying to the same job you're about to go after soon, right? So we know those 3 things. Now what we look at just based on that alone is, and using that first framework of the career progression life cycle, now we know, man, there are roles out there that you could easily go after that if you were to get those roles, these are like 1 or 2 levels up, right? We typically kind of like course correct where they should be going next. And it's usually a level or 2 above. Because how many times, and we ask our clients this, how many times in your last 5 years did you say to yourself, I could easily do my manager's job, right? And it's usually a lot. So it's like, okay, well then let's just go for your manager's job. Let's go for that title. So now what we do is we study these job descriptions. We study the roles out there. So we help them find these roles and study the roles, just study the job description. And what we're able to do very clearly and very effectively is now align your background with this new role you're going after, right? And so it's such a cool process because like, to me, it's like the first aha moment that they go through in our program. They're like, oh my gosh, I easily can see, and all this confidence comes in. They feel more empowered. They're like, I could easily see myself crushing it in this next role. I like them to visualize themselves in that, right? So then comes step 2, which is now, then and only then, I guess, is when we touch a resume or a LinkedIn profile. Because the way I think about it is, at the end of the day, a resume and a LinkedIn profile is nothing but an advertisement, a digital advertisement of your skills and your capabilities, right? Would you agree?
True.
Okay, so then if we both agree that it's an advertisement, then the next question we should ask is, well, what makes good advertising? It's copywriting, right? Well, then it's like, okay, well, what makes good copywriting? Well, it's truly understanding what your target audience, what problems they're facing, what their needs are, and then being able to clearly and concisely articulate how your experience, your product, your services can solve their pain points, their problems, right?
Yeah.
That's why we do the audit. So think about what most people do. Remember, we talked about reactionary. The second they look for a job, they just literally put everything that they've ever done on their resume and then just start applying to hundreds of things. And then they ask themselves 7 months later, why haven't I found anything? It's like, well, it's because you're talking about random things and you're going for random positions. So your advertising is all wrong and you're not reaching your target audience. So, go ahead.
And if you're not studying the job descriptions, you don't know what words to use
Correct.
to get your search rankings up, basically.
Right. Keywords matter. And then what experiences should I talk about? And most importantly, what accomplishments and achievements, what quantifiable data should go in here that will make my resume, it would make it unreasonable for someone to not want to speak with me, right? Because everything I'm saying addresses everything they need. So now in step 2 is when we create their advertisement, right? We dial it in and we know exactly how to write it because we did the audit in the beginning. So then comes step 3, which is, again, most of our clients are going for like 200 all the way up to like 500K jobs. And one thing we just know to be true is it is really hard to land those jobs through applying online, right? It's much more effective to network your way into it. And even in today's market today, the highest conversion rate that someone is seeing from applying to jobs is 2%, meaning they apply to 100 jobs, they get 2 companies that say, let's interview. That's a horrible, horrible statistic. So
how you even carry on with yourself? Like, where's the confidence in the next time you would try to apply to 100 jobs? I mean, that's so difficult.
Yeah, you're dejected constantly, right? And imagine what mindset that puts you in. So instead, we just tell our clients, we teach them in a strategy, and we've talked about this before. It's called proactive outreach and sending what's called value-added reach outs. So we teach them how to find hiring managers, senior leaders, executives, and even recruiters who are working at the companies they want to go and work at, to get a conversation started about a role they know they would crush already if they got it. Right. And then what we do is we help them create scripts leveraging the information we gathered from the audit to reach out to these executives. So what our clients are not saying is, hey, Arjun, I saw this project manager position on your team and I think I'm a good fit. I'd love to talk to you. Because everyone says that. But instead, they'll say something along the lines of like, hey, Arjun, I was just doing some research on this project manager position you have open on your team. Notice you're looking for someone that comes from, having led projects from inception to launch in the B2B space. and managing budgets of upwards of 3 million and cross-functionally supporting senior leadership, engineering, design, analytics, and product. I'd love to walk you through how for the last 8 years, I've helped companies like Cisco, Disney, yada, 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 deliver 97% of their projects ahead of schedule while also being under budget, saving over 7.5 million in the aggregate, as well as delivering projects that have brought in over 13.5 million in net new revenue for companies, again, like Disney, while supporting analytics, engineering, design, and whatever. Would you have 15 minutes to chat to see if I might be able to help your team out? So
Yeah, that's a yes.
that's a yes, right? Think about that mess. Now, here's a conversion rate I do know. That summer cohort we just talked about that took them 71 days to find a job, they were
Right.
converting at a 43.6% conversion rate. The cohort before that was at a 41 point something conversion rate. So it's usually trends in like the 38s to like 44, 45, right? But so think about that. Now our clients have sent out 100 messages. 60 or so people have not even responded or completely turned them down. But 40 of them have said yes. So now imagine you do this, and let's just say you're on the worst end of it, right? You do the things we're walking them through. Let's just assume for a second you're so bad that you don't even convert at 40%, you convert at 20%. Right. Still a lot better than the 2% you would get from applying to jobs, right? So imagine now you have 20 senior leaders saying, yeah, Arjun, let's talk. Right? That's aha moment number 2, because everything that we were hypothesized in the audit is now being validated because senior leaders are saying, yeah, let's talk. So if that conversation goes well, now let's cut that number in half, okay? We're still playing worst case scenario. Out of the 20 executive senior leaders, hiring managers you talk to, let's just say 10 of them say, no way, this is not going to work. But the other 10 say, yeah, Arjun, let's talk. Or sorry, why don't you interview here? Right? And so now you've just secured an interview with 10 different companies. And most of our clients are interviewing between 8 to 12 companies. So they constantly have like, they don't, the stress on them is a lot lower, right? Because they have 8 companies, 10 companies that they're interviewing with. They could care less if 7 of them reject them, because I still have 3 others, right? So now you have a senior leader on the inside of 10 different companies championing you all throughout the interview process. They really like you. It's hard to botch that, right? I mean, you won't get all 10, right? It's just, to us, like we think of it like baseball. In baseball, if you bat a 300, you're in the Hall of Famer,
It's
right?
crazy.
So you striked out 7 out of 10 times. Same with our clients. We tell them, just keep your expectations clear. Just, that's why we want to increase the odds. So we want more companies we want you to get in front of more companies to interview with. And then, so now you've done this thing, you are interviewing with multiple companies. And then in our program, we literally prep our clients for every single interview they go on. That is a rule. You have to prep with one of the coaches before any interview you go on. And we focus on a lot of things. We focus on nervous system regulation, right? So getting you in a state of like peace and calm and confidence. So we have a mindset coach who focuses on that. She's phenomenal. And then we focus on everything else: behavioral questions, technical questions, the tell me about yourself questions, the case studies, panel interviews, right? We want you, we prep so much. And then we actually tell our clients to record these interviews. So they will literally like record their interview, like that audio app on your phone that you have, that audio recorder or whatever it's called, voice recorder.
Yeah.
They will literally just put the phone next to the laptop and record it. Or sometimes they'll use QuickTime and record the screen. And then, now we never share these recordings, but they'll send us the recordings. And then we actually do a debrief call with each client. So now we know everything, right? We can say, Arjun, after watching that, man, when they asked you this question, you crushed it, keep doing that. But over here, you missed a really key opportunity to talk about that thing you told me in the audit that would have drove that point home. Or over here, you fumbled and then it seemed like you lost your confidence. Let's work on that. Let's run it through a few times. And over here, you overtalked or undertalked or oversold or undersold. I don't know, right? There's so many reasons. The reason most people, just FYI, choke in their interviews is because those interviews come so infrequently in the first place.
Oh,
right?
so you're out of practice.
Yeah, you're out of practice.
Unless you're working with you.
No, but or you're just putting a lot of stress on yourself, right? Because once the interview finally comes, you're like, damn, I got to be so perfect.
Yeah.
And so like it's all that pressure can choke you up, mess you up. So that's why we prep and debrief before every call. So now you see why we only really take 10 people at a time, and we literally handhold them. And what happens is eventually they will get an offer. And then we just help them negotiate the offer. But the cool thing is, for most of our clients, I won't say all, but most of our clients, once the offer comes in, very rarely will they get lowballed, because you've done all this stuff in the first place. You've kept your value high, your perceived value to be high. And so on the back end, we still help them negotiate just to make sure they're not leaving anything on the table if we can help it. Title, sign on, stocks, salary, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the process that we take our clients through. It's very methodical. There's nothing special or magical in there. It's just we're focusing on each step of the process. And if you remove the focus from the goal to the process, you will naturally hit the goal,
That's right. That's
right?
right. Yeah. Stop worrying about the outcome, worry about the process, fall in love with the process, really hold yourself accountable through that process, and just do the things that are being told to you and just see what happens over the course of 2 to 3 months.
Correct, because you can only focus on what you can control. And what can you control in the job search process? Just your inputs, the things you can do. There'll be 7 companies that reject you. It's fine,
Yeah. No, I
right?
love
Because
it
you
because the way you're structuring this, yeah, it's methodical, but that makes it different. But the way I'm thinking about it is, if you ever sit down with a financial advisor, are you going to sit down with the financial advisor who breezes through the audit portion, or are you going to sit down with the financial advisor who sits with you, really understands your entire picture, your entire story, and then from there creates the financial plan that's actually going to get you to the destination that you want in terms of like your retirement goals or your financial goals or your estate goals, whatever it is. But if you're rushing through that first part and don't hold yourself accountable through the process, chances are you're going to be paying fees to a financial advisor and having subpar outcomes.
Yep, 100%. Great analogy. I would agree with that. And you should take this as seriously as your finances.
Exactly. Going back to the earlier part of the conversation, it's like, right, everything else is planned. You're usually planning your finances. You're maybe even planning your family, right? You do family planning, but like, are you doing career planning? And if you are, it's time to take it as serious. But you've talked about like networking, and you've said that a couple or times. My question is, in this environment, like I know I'm struggling with networking when all day I'm just working remote. Have you been able to help people like break through that, start to network more? Like, what is the advice you have around networking in a remote world?
I think I mean, it's just something you should always be doing, whether you're in a job or you're not. And if that means, you know, scaling it up over time, that's fine too, right? How can is once a week, can I reach out to 5, 10 people who are doing like, let's say you're working, you're happy. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be putting yourself in front of others, right? So is there like user groups at the most basic level? Are there user groups on LinkedIn I could join where there's other professionals who are all geeking out to the thing that I'm doing? Yes, there are, right? Hundreds and thousands of them. Are there Slack communities? If I'm a woman and I'm in product management, there's a group on Facebook called Women in Product. I'm not even allowed in, but so many of our members are in there, and they talk about how valuable that thing is. It's just women sharing resources with one another, supporting one another, putting on talks for other members to join and listen, and it's free. And so
Yeah.
what if once a month or once a week you reach out to 5 people in each community that you're in and just said, hey, I love what you're doing. I love how you've been able to navigate your career. Would you be open to a 10-minute coffee chat, 15-minute coffee chat? And then build your relationship slowly over time, right? Understand what they need. Ask if there's a way you can ever help them too. Maybe there is. Or at bare minimum, if I talk to you and me and you end up chatting for 20 minutes and I find out you're a big coffee lover, what if I come across a cool article or podcast about coffee? I can still send you that. And now we're staying in touch and I'm nurturing slowly a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do think whether you are working, especially if you're not working, but even if you are, I think it's just worth putting yourself in rooms, virtual rooms or in-person rooms with other people who are doing the thing you want to be doing. Cody Sanchez, there's a girl named Cody Sanchez, I follow her. She says, put yourself as much as you can in a room where other people's reality is your dreams. you
Love
know?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to, because then you're literally what's happening in your brain. It's like your brain is seeing what you can do, and like it's called like basically expanding your mind. But there's like neurotransmitters that start working when you start to see this person's reality is what you've been dreaming. I love that. I love that. And I know just over the last couple of years, like I've really struggled with the networking part of things because again, it feels so remote. I don't really know where to go, but I do know that I am missing out on being in these rooms or being around people where I can just like be a sponge, right? And I feel like it's so important, but I'm struggling with that in this environment. Um, Back to LinkedIn real quick because I think this is another maybe hotly debated topic is do you put the open to work badge up or do you leave it off?
I think you should keep it on. People think of it like, oh, do I look desperate if I'm posting that or sharing that? And it's like, well, do you think a company looks desperate when they're posting a job? No, right? They're just telling you what they want, what they need. It's the same thing. And I know there are recruiters out there who will reach out to someone with the open to work banner first rather than reaching out to someone who doesn't have it because the perception is that this person will respond to me a lot faster,
Hmm.
right? I've never in my life heard someone say, "Oh, this guy's desperate because he applied to this job," or "This guy's desperate because he has open to work." So no one says that, right? So I think you should keep it on.
Have you ever done the like comparison between the way you're navigating people's career and like the whole process you just walked us through versus what like Chat GPT would offer if you prompted it? Like, have you ever used the Chat
No,
GPT?
we use ChatGPT. We have AI tools built in, like to help with some of the interview prep. So I don't discount ChatGPT, but I would never compare it because at the end of the day, you can't ChatGPT can't help you control your nervous system. ChatGPT can't help you build rapport. ChatGPT can't help you come across as vulnerable and authentic and leverage it in ways that you need to in an interview, right? ChatGPT can tell you what to ask, how to ask,
Yeah,
what questions to prepare for, but then you can't say it to ChatGPT and then have it tell you was it good or bad or tweak this, say it this way or whatever, right? I'm sure there are tools out there like that. I don't know how effective they are. I could care less because I know humans would rather work with another human when it comes to this stuff, you know?
100%.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I know like anyone can Google like AI prompts and like career and job search prompts for ChatGPT. Like oh, that stuff is all available. But I was just curious like how it compares to you. And obviously the human element is just a huge difference. But then that entire framework of spending time from the audit to the last point, I mean, it is differentiated. So and like the stuff that you talked about today has just been incredible.
Cool, man. I appreciate it. And thanks again for having me. It's always fun when we jam out to this stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the description of the episode, but just for listeners, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Mm, you could follow on LinkedIn, I think is the best way. It's just my full name, and you'll find it. I think that's the best way. Just connect with me and stay in touch with me. Let me know how things are going and let us know of how we can help.
I love it. I love it. Is there any other last minute advice that you have for people? I mean, you covered so much, but what would be the lasting impact you would want to share?
I don't know. It's probably super cliche. That's a good question. I always just think of you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? Whether it's with anything we've talked about, finances, marriage, kids, anything. But since we've talked about career, it's the same thing here. If you're not taking the time to plan out your career, good chance your career is not going to go towards anything fulfilling.
Love it. I appreciate it.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.